Just use the reminder. Any sentences, recall it, and then it will happen according to the reminders, automatically. When there is a doing, it will have someone who is doing it. Just use the reminder, the recall, with everything, discard the discarding itself. Use this reminder for the samsara. The dwelling within oneself need to be purified. Therefore, use the reminder. With everything, discard the discarding itself. It is to purify samsara within and without by these reminders. And it will happen accordingly. It is for the blessing. It will purify the external samsara together with the internal. Use the reminders for the blessing. Discard the discarding itself simultaneously, within and without. It will purify the karmic difficulties from samsara within oneself. The habit of separating from samsara will be purified. It will turn into the essence of the great compassion. It is the habit that separates. It is a kind of karmic difficulties. Nibbana cannot be separated from anything else. Nibbana is not Nibbana. Samsara is not samsara. Let's conclude right away. Everything is know that is not know itself. With everything, give up the giving up itself. Use this reminder to bless samsara. Just recall it. The karmic difficulties of such a habit in all forms will be purified, and then the great compassion will not be blocked. It will become the essence of the great compassion instead. There is no need to separate from anything. With everything that discard the discarding itself, there is no separation. To discard samsara, then is discarding samsara. But discard the discarding itself, there is no separation. There is no separation between attachment or detachment. With everything, discard the discarding itself. With everything not attached to the non-attachment itself. There is no need to separate non-attachment from anything whatsoever. Just use the reminder, not attached to the non-attachment itself. It will end all about separation between attachment and non-attachment. It is a kind of karmic habits. This will block the great compassion. Therefore, continue to help through ending to purify samsara constantly. Open the gates of perceptions as usual. it will happen evenly, in balance. There is no need to rest. Just continue with the reminders to purify onwards. There will be automatically no grasping for the internal and the external. When there is a resting mind, it's the karmic habits that is hiding within oneself. No matter it is subtle and light, it is a karmic difficulties that is there. Just open up without choosing inside or outside. Make a conclusion amidst everything. Open up without choosing. Because whenever you receive anything, you still choose inside or outside. Open up in a way without grasping for the opening. Make a conclusion simultaneously. Discard the discarding itself simultaneously. Use this reminder simultaneously. Automatically there will be no choosing whether it's inside or outside. All the Vedana is there because there is maintaining, is still choosing the state of mind. It's become Vedana unbearable. It receives the unbearable. When it's opening with the essence, discard the discarding itself, it will not receive the Vedana from samsara. When there is blessing without purification, there is just receiving karmic difficulties. Using the Anupap, the mighty force without conclusion, there is a bounce back. Therefore, even opening widely, it has to be without grasping for anything, with the essence of uninvolved within the uninvolvement itself. Brighten out with disengage from disengagement itself. Purify at the same time as opening. Then it will not open up to burden and carry and receive any Vedana. It's not to be setting up to receive. Instead, it will purify, awakening in the way that doesn't grasp for disengaging itself. The unbearable is there that is taking in. It's because there is maintaining, still burdening. Dissolve all choosing. Open up normally without choosing internally or externally. Because there will be grasping for internal and external when there is choosing. That's the Vedana, the unbearable. So amidst everything without choosing, open up amidst everything without choosing internally or externally. Therefore, you need to use the essence of the reminders with everything, not attached to the non-attachment itself. Then there is no choosing. With everything, discard the discarding itself. With this, there is no choosing whether it's inside or outside. Or everything is not attached, not grasping for the non-grasping itself. Then there is no choosing, internally or externally. Let there be the reminders, terminologies, or sentences that purify themselves constantly. Then they will purify the external and the internal, because the grasping is still the samudhaya, the cause of suffering. Then it will be purification of the extinction and the emptiness for samsara. So right now, there is an opening, but use the reminders from all the sentences that are given. Every sentence can be used. Then the opening will not be in the way of receiving. Instead, it will just purify. So it's subjected to the reminders that purify themselves. The sentences that purify themselves, we need to recall only these sentences, because there will be just purifying, not receiving. It's about purifying, not receiving. Normal opening without purifying through the reminders. Anyhow, they will just receiving karma and karmic difficulties of samsara. Receiving the Vedana is not going to be normal because knowing has the duty of acknowledging and receiving karma and karmic difficulties of samsara normally. So there must be the reminders that purify this normality. The discarding itself is not about normal or not normal. With everything, the discarding itself is not at being indifferent or not. With everything, the discarding itself is not about being still or not. Let's purify through this conclusion, like this. Until it becomes the same essence. All the time, disengage from disengagement, no grasping for the non-grasping itself. Purify through the extinction and emptiness only, not about receiving. Use the reminders constantly. They are self-purification. When there is no purification within the reminders themselves, within the knowing and seeing, there is just receiving. It creates and it also receives from knowing, acknowledging and receiving. Therefore, discard the discarding at all times. No grasping for the non-grasping at all times. There is no need to do anything. Just use the reminders. It will happen accordingly. Just reminding, just recalling without doing anything else. No grasping on its own will happen accordingly. Once it's at all times, then it will be happening at all times. It will not grasp for oneself and all things simultaneously. It affects. This sentence results in no grasping for oneself and all things simultaneously. Just recall it. Disengage from disengagement itself at all times, recall it. Until discard the discarding itself at all times. With this, it will be the essence of the purification of the extinction and the emptiness automatically. Without the conclusion as such, everyone will just receive through the knowing, receiving karma, karmic difficulties and Vedana. Without purification, it's gonna be heavy. Each reminder has self-purification in itself. It's needed to be used. Then the mighty force of the purification will happen naturally. Open up completely in the way that the non-grasping for the non-grasping itself. There is no need to be clear or not clear with anything. Through seeing and not seeing, being empty or not, don't pay attention to it. Whether there is anything that is attached or not attached, there is no need to pay attention to it. Make a conclusion to purify instantly. Disengage from disengaging itself, no grasping for the non-grasping itself. When it's reminded, it will happen accordingly. Automatically, it will not be about grasping. Therefore, continue to use this reminder. So long as there is a delusion, it will create samsara. The delusion is derived from the system of titti, knowing for knowing, seeing for seeing. Samsara is derived from the system of titti, of opinions and meanings. Seeing, maintaining seeing, knowing, maintaining knowing. That's why it becomes fabrication of samsara, integrating continuously, branching out in all forms in each period of time. This is development of titti, of the delusion to see, to know, is increasing at each period of time in various forms, is repeatedly. Therefore, we need to use the conclusion to purify the delusion to see, to know, the titti, the delusion. We have to use terminologies to purify the delusion in terminologies. We have to recall the terminologies that purify terminologies, the assume that purify the assume. Any statements that purify themselves, we need to use these kind of reminders as a medium to purify the delusion of samsara, deluded viewpoints within seeing and knowing. That's all. This is not about practicing for liberation of suffering. This is to purify the delusion within titti, within seeing and knowing. All the delusion to grasp from seeing and knowing, from thinking, terminologies within the mind verbally that has the grasping mind that overlaying. We have to use terminologies that dissolve themselves, that don't grasp themselves, that purify themselves. Then it can purify the grasping mind for terminologies that has been there. All the overlaying of terminologies on top of titti, opinions and meanings. There are two kinds of terminologies, the one that is grasping and the one that is not grasping. Two types. They are different. The one that is grasping for terminologies, it will branch out into titti, firm attachments, realms of existence. It's firm attachment to seeing and knowing into the future, grasping for assume up. But if it's another one, another type of terminologies, it will cease, not becoming knowing and seeing further, because there is no grasping for anything within knowing and seeing. There must be this conclusion to end within no time like this. Every sentence must end within no time. It can end within the sentence itself, so that it will not be grasped as samsara in itself. Every sentence, let it become the sentence of the enlightenment, not become wisdom, realms of existence, not to become sharpness or brilliance. Let each sentence end within itself, cut through the knowing itself. Don't let the sentence become something. Definitely. Don't let it become a sentence to practice. And use this reminder to purify samsara. Whether having or not having, it cannot be chosen. Whether it's empty or not empty, it cannot be chosen. That which has nothing to do with being empty or not. There will not be any grasping on top of being empty or not. No grasping mind on top of this. That which has nothing to do with being empty or not. That which has nothing to do with Nibbana or not. With this, it will purify the grasping mind that overlaying on top of Nibbana. There is no choosing whether it's Nibbana or not. We have to use these sentences. That which has nothing to do with Nibbana or not Nibbana. Nothing to do with being empty or not. It will end right away. The grasping mind will be ended right away. That which has nothing to do with mine or not mine. We call it constantly. It will happen in the way that is uninvolving. Use it for the blessing. Remark this. Conclude towards ending. Whenever it's for the sake of oneself, it creates stress and pressure right away because it's not about grasping. Therefore, conclude for samsara. It's not about liberation for the sake of liberation, unwinding for the sake of unwinding. It is to help unwind for samsara. Whenever it's grasping, it's samudhaya, it's become poisonous. It is desire, delusion, and delusive attachment. It is a deluded attachment. It has to be given only, not to be taken. The conclusion must be given, not to be taken. Like this, huh? That which has nothing to do with letting go or not. This is called conclusion of Nibbana. The habit of choosing for something is still blocking oneself. Choosing to be empty, choosing nothingness. This kind of choosing is blocking the great compassion. It also is not about itself either. Having is not at the having. Not having is not at not having. Even nothing is there. It's not at this point. We have to purify this. With everything, no is not no itself. When there is no choosing, it will be the essence that is even with everything automatically. Samsara and Nibbana will be even through the purification, which is automatic. The great compassion will be balanced with samsara. There is no separation. There is no delusion to separate anything from anything. Emptiness is not emptiness. Therefore, let's make a conclusion to purify the grasping mind, that which has nothing to do with being empty or not. In this way, there is no involvement. Whenever there is involvement with emptiness, it's not empty already. Therefore, that which has nothing to do with being empty or not, that's the uninvolvement, which is truly not involved. That which has nothing to do with being attached or not. Then it will be truly not attached. That which has nothing to do with even the uninvolvement itself continues so. Proceed as such all together simultaneously. then the mighty force of the extinction and the emptiness will be without traces. Blessing without traces. Blessing samsara without traces is in the way of purifying traces. That which has nothing to do with the uninvolvement itself, let it be proceeded simultaneously with everything. Everything is uninvolved within the uninvolvement itself. Let's make a conclusion like this. Use the word everything.